So what we hear with most companies under 5 million is like, I'm out on a route all day, or I'm running around and I don't get home till 9 o'clock. And then, so I'm not doing my manuals. I'm not thinking how to do collaborations. I'm not thinking of how to come up with an incentive plan for my current employees for them to make more money, which means more revenue for me. So what would you tell that person? Like, I know what I would tell them, but what would you tell them?
I would say you don't rise to the level expectations, you fall to the level of your systems.
And I would say suck it up and do it from 9 to 1 and take 5 less hours of sleep.
And then I would say that at the very end.
Welcome to the Premium Mindset, the weekly podcast where homegrown entrepreneurs and business owners, Ritchey and Cameron Bawden, share the good, the bad, and the ugly of modern entrepreneurship and reveal what really happens behind the scenes of their personal and professional lives. As owners of two of America's fastest growing and most disruptive companies, Coconut Cleaning and Green Mango Pest Control. Stay tuned for real stories, struggles, insight, and advice from real entrepreneurs in real time.
What's going on, everyone? I'm excited to get into today's topic where Cameron and I are going to dissect the 5 most common mistakes that entrepreneurs make that hinder them from growth and getting everything that they want. And stay tuned towards the end because we also have a bonus that goes into something that's very near and dear to us that we see a lot of people make the mistake with. So I feel like what's been really cool since we've really made an effort to get out on social media is we've had a lot of small business owners reach out to us, or potential business owners. And I feel like you and I talk about consistently things that they are doing that bottleneck themselves and hinder them from their progression. And so we have put together 5 of the main reasons that business owners make or don't do that keep them from growing.
And what's funny, like, a lot of these things that they have, like, we're probably hypersensitive to them because it's exactly what we did. So it's completely normal. Like, all the things that you're feeling it's business, right? So we labeled 5 things that we feel like everyone's doing. And it starts with like one thing that I feel like you labeled the best, and that is like build for scale. So talk about that, because I feel like that's one of the things that you talk a lot about with our companies. Like, what does that mean if you were explaining it to someone that's just starting out?
Yeah, I think where that idea has come from is there are a lot of moments throughout the year where you're at a pivot for the business and people creatively think, let's do this, or let's change and do this. And I don't know where exactly the source came from, but I've stuck with that saying, is that everything we do, we need to do at scale. Mm-hmm. Meaning, if that works right now, will it also work in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? And if that system doesn't work, then we need to either implement what works now and then have a very clear roadmap for where it's going to lead. Like, if I could go hindsight, building for scale very simply is, I want to attract top talent, so I'm going to pay top dollar. Well, right now you might be in a position to pay a certain, A player to come and make X. But if you just take a little bit more time and look at the margins for what it means at scale, meaning, okay, if you have an entire team running off that, does it work? And I would even say that Kathleen, our HR manager, highlighted this principle very well, and that is, if every manager demonstrated the same behaviors of this manager, would the company be better or worse? And so very simply, I think now every time we approach an operational procedure, a change or a pay change, or, hey, we're moving into a new fiscal year, what kind of parties do we want to hold? We approach it with this idea of, is that something that we can consistently do and hold on to, or is that something that just only works right now?
So you said something that I see consistent in all businesses, and we definitely made the mistake. You talked about the pay scale. And I want to highlight that because when you have 1 or 2, 3, 4 employees, even if you had 10, your pay scale process and how you go about paying that person, like, you need to think about scale, because once you have 100 people, if it's so complicated, and the rule of thumb that's been taught to us is that, hey, if that employee can't go home and explain it to his wife, and his wife understands, or vice versa, right? The woman goes home and explains it to her husband, If they can't understand it, then it's too complicated. And if it's too complicated, guess what happens to your payroll specialist? She's going to make a mistake 100% of the time. So you might be shorting people money, or you might be overpaying them. You don't know. And then it's just added labor onto that person. We had a consultant come in within the past couple months of Green Mango, and I was embarrassed still to this day to show them our inside pay scale, because it was like 0 to 10 days, you get, $10, 15 to 20, you get $12 or $15, whatever it is. But and we did it because we were like, at the time we had 2 salesmen, and one of the complaints was we don't want to work old leads. So we were thinking, oh, we'll be the heroes and give them more money if they work the older leads. One, that created an incentive to wait for leads to be contacted, which was a problem. But the other incentive is like, imagine trying to track that across the board of, 6 salesmen now. And it's like our payroll specialist, it takes hours and hours.
Yep.
And that's what we mean by build to scale.
Yep. I think of one other principle that I think could highlight this very well. I'm not sure if you remember this, but when we started Coconut, you said, hey, with your first few people, we want to pay them to get reviews. And we paid like $25 a 5-star review. But here's where you can get in trouble as a business owner if you're not thinking like, can we do this long term? Or is $25 worth its weight at 1,000 plus 5-star reviews? Or is it really like, let's just get to 100 5-stars, and then after 100 5-stars, we're going to start paying you guys 15, and then after 500 we're paying you guys $2 a 5-star review. We also invested in some software that we pay a subscription per month that facilitates customers writing a review that auto goes out when the invoice is closed. And I remember people were pissed because they're like, that's cool and all, but I don't get like the same payment, because now we're paying a $500-$600 subscription to this software company to auto send out a link saying, hey, leave us a 5-star review.
Right.
And I just remember not getting ahead of the curve and saying, oh shoot, guys, well now we actually pay this money towards software that eats into that $25, so I can still pay you guys $5. And I remember there was like 2-3 months where people were upset because they were getting 3 or 4 5-stars a day, and that's $75 to $100 a day.
Yeah.
Anywhere from $500 to $1,000 a pay period that they were missing out on. But I wasn't thinking when I said $25 per 5-star review. I didn't give. And I know you can't always predict things, but like you just have to do basic thinking and say, can I do this when we're at 5 vans, 10 vans, 15 vans? And I think that if I could recommend anything to anyone as far as implementing new systems, operations, pay, having certain people come in, it's like, okay, does this person, are they convenient right now? Or is this something that you're always going to need? Or can multiple managers or multiple people take those responsibilities? Because I feel like we are, what's the proper word? We're just getting kicked in our stomach for having luxury positions that in a moment of need, we're like, yeah, get that help, like hire that person. Right. And then we start looking at all the responsibilities across the board, and it's like, it's not even a wage thing. It's just like, man, I really feel like what 12 people are doing, 7 people could.
Right.
And I feel like it takes one more level of thinking when you are implementing anything to say, do I need this now, and will I need this in 6 months or 12 months, or is this a Band-Aid, and can I set up better expectations doing so? So that's from like how you order things, how you get your equipment, mass ordering. So that's number 1. Number 2 is one of my favorites. She said start at 5. That's number 5. We're working our way down.
So that was number 5. Number 4 is SOPs, standard operating procedures. Yeah. I feel like that's kind of our zone of excellence, is really getting into it. But with that said, and you brought this up to me, it's like, hey, Coconut's been in business for 7 years. There's still departments that don't have SOPs. Yeah. So as much as we love it, as much as we want to say like that's our zone of excellence, there's one company that we have that doesn't even have those in it. And the thing is guys, if you just have to take the time. It's probably like, even for people that love it, it's hard. Like it's not fun to sit down and go through every standard operating procedure for everything that you could run into. And that's, from hey, someone wants to cancel, to the technician got a flat tire, to the dog, bit
cadence
a
of
technician.
spraying.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's like have it written down, because what's going to happen is as you scale, a lot of managers and a lot of owners waste their time taking those calls from their employees, asking those questions, and they have to repeat themselves. And so they're just going in this hamster wheel of feeling like they're living the same week or the same life every single year. That's how I felt for a long time, is that, because it's like, man, I swear we're doing the same thing over and over. Well, have those procedures in place. And I love what you tell people now. It's like, go read the manual. Yep. If you still have questions, get back to me.
I never hear back.
And that's a better, like that phone call is 30 seconds versus if you went and explain the process of whatever they're asking, like you're 3 to 5 minutes, probably minimum. So imagine all that. I mean, how many hours a day are you guys taking calls from your people and they're asking you something that you've taught them before, or that it's a company policy? And here's the thing. If you're asking yourself, well, we don't have a policy for that, you're going to save yourself a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of stress by thinking through it right now when you have like a sound mind versus in the moment.
Yeah. I think the principle could be summed up by, if you have to say it twice, write it down. I think where I've always been guilty is I will have a one-off conversation. Somebody's like, hey, this person's just been late 2-3 times. Do I write them up? Is this a verbal warning? I don't get it. A verbal warning is also a written piece of paper. And I take that 3 to 5 minute phone call, and then I take that same phone call with another manager 2 days later. And I'm like, oh man, this is inconvenient. But then it's like, I do nothing about it. And I feel like the level of leadership in good, better, and best is like the midnight oil is doing the things that you had to say twice, writing them down, and in some form of software. We've currently invested in Trainual. However, the thing that I would illustrate most when it comes to SOPs is that rather than just like, hey, you're having a morning meeting, and I would just write it on the whiteboard and be like, guys, here's the script. Say this, 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 and this. Right. And then what happens? You wash it all down, and then the next monthly comes, and I'm like, or next like home show.
Maybe
right?
Someone was hired, or
right.
maybe.
Like we'll do a home show, and I'll have a new group of people selling at the home show. I'm like, guys, say this verbatim, this, this, and this. And then I wash it away. And then and then I don't work the next home show. And then they get like 300 less sales. And I'm like, hey, what were you telling them to say? He's like, I don't know. I just kind of was saying what works for me. It's like, freak, man. Like it costs so much money not to sit down and write these things down. And in this age of technology, all you have to do is turn on the voice dictator in your notes, and you can literally speak it into your phone, and it's already there. And then you just kind of chop it up into little step-by-step processes. So that's a huge mistake over the years that I'm like, I know this in my head. I have not put it down. And it's in the after hours of, okay, here's what I dealt with this week. And now I am writing it down, making sure that everyone gets it and knows how to deal with it.
Okay. Number 3. And it's funny because just randomly we started this podcast. We have the poster outside that talks about like, if you want to make $1 million a year, it breaks down to this much a day. You want to make 500, this much, and so on and so forth. But very rarely do I see a business owner have a financial roadmap. And what we mean by that is everyone gets into the business. I have a feeling they get into business saying like, okay, I'm making 60 to 90 grand a year right now. If I could make 100 to 150, like it's worth it. I'll have freedom. I'll have all this, whatever. And then they get 2 years in and they're still making 60. And they're like, I'm more stressed out than I've ever been. I'm in more debt than I ever had and working longer hours. And they're frustrated. And it's like, okay, well, your goal was 150. And we start breaking down, well, how many accounts is that? Or how many jobs is that a day? What are your profit? And no one has this like roadmap in order to get there. And it's the same thing with losing weight. Okay, if you want to lose weight,
are you pointing to me?
It's a simple calculation of, how many calories you burn and how much you intake and all those different things. But business is the same way, and people go into business, and I can say this because this is what we did specifically with Agave. It's like, we hear, oh, you can bill, $800 for a windshield, and you probably pay a technician $100, $50 to $100, and then the glass can't be more than like $200. So you're telling me like I can make $400, $500 a windshield, And then you get in it and it's like, oh, well, insurance, doesn't pay exactly on time. They're usually, net minimum 60. And then it's like, oh, and then is it OEM? Is it, like all the factors come in and then you're like, crap, dude, they're like, we're making 50 to $100 a windshield. Like, I'm never going to make a couple $100,000 a year at this. And you're 3 years in and you're just kind of like, I wish I would have done the math at the beginning. But people get into business just hearing their friends. And I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. Like I mentioned, my dad had this window cleaner come over and he couldn't wait to tell me about this window cleaner and how much money he was making. He charged my dad like $1,200 or whatever. He was there for 2 hours. He had this special, water and this wand that basically he didn't even have to wipe it. And he just like got through. He's like, he had to have made like $800. He was here for 3 hours, $900. And I'm just like, Dad, I know it's not that healthy. Like it isn't. And maybe that's just me being, dogmatic, but at the end of the day, like there's more that goes into the business than people think. And so ask somebody that's in the business, like to open up and share with you like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. I love that. Two things to that. I remember the day that I realized how difficult business was going to be congruent to my expectations. And it was the day that me, you, Dusty are all in this partnership. And I said, I boldly threw out there, I want to make $1 million. And then I sat at a whiteboard. I'm like, well, what does that mean? It means that you would make $1 million and Dusty would make $1 million and I would make $1 million. So that's $3 million net cash, not just net income, but net cash. And I said, well, what are our margins? It was like 5% at the time. So I'm like, 5%. If I have to make $3 million, I have to do $300 million. Like no big,
no, you'd have to do 600.
Yeah, it was insane. So I was
60 would be 6.
We don't have a
We're
calculator
almost there,
here.
man.
Yeah.
We're almost there.
Right?
We're at 6 million. Carry the 0. We'll be at 60.
Right? But this is what I'd say, because I know that you've actually worked with entrepreneurs that they're on the other side of the spectrum. They are making 200, but they're like, Cameron, I'm miserable. I can't hire anybody. I don't trust anyone. It's like, okay, take $100,000 off take $100,000 off your income and hire someone. Mm-hmm. Well, no. It's like, okay, like how long did you go without getting paid from Green Mango? Mm-hmm. 6-7 years. You're at 7 years at Coconut. Like you're living the principle of delaying gratification as long as it's possible to get what you want, but try to let that sink in. If you're saying, hey, I want to make $250,000, but I also want my business to grow, that's going to come at a cost of you not being able to grow, because the money that you're taking as income is not going into the actual growth of the business. And that's something that I very quickly understood with you guys, because you said, hey, minimum 5 years, plan to make nothing. I was like, okay, I could do that. But then once I actually declared what my hopes and ambitions are, I was like, wait, $1 million, okay. So what if my margins are 25%? Okay, I need to be doing $12 million to make $1 million. If you guys were also making that same amount. And I just remember that feeling was like, it at least gave me a roadmap to know where I was off, but where I feel like you guys always did a good job verbally, we just never had it written down, was every time we had excess cash flow, you guys knew where to put it. And hey, we're putting this money into marketing. Hey, we're going to put this money into down payments. Hey, we're going to put this money into more recently, what does James call it? Just like the cash reserves, mm-hmm. right? So a huge mistake people can make is that, there's a lot of ways that it can manifest, but it's not having a clear roadmap for where you want every dollar spent. And at every level of growth and new margins, when you go from 5 to 15% to 25% to 30%, whatever it is, making sure that you know when that cash is there, even when it's Christmas time and there's 20 grand sitting there, that you're like, I'm going to take $2,000. I'm not going to take 20. I'm going to take 2. I'm not going to get the boat. That's the hard thing that for me to digest sometimes when a guy's a year or two in a business and I see him getting the Corvette, I see him getting the boat. I'm like, that's great. Like if you're happy, that's all that matters. But I know that it's coming at the expense of not growing.
Yeah. Which is the second thing.
Yep.
And I put we're down to the second thing. One of the most important things is mentorship, because there's someone out there that has walked the path that you want to walk. And we've talked so much about this, but I couldn't have not put it on the list when we're talking about the top 5 things, because there's so many people out there that want to help because someone helped them. And I think that's where we're at too. It's like, we want to give back because like we've made probably all the mistakes. And if we can help people avoid landmines, like we want to, because it's not a couple $1,000 in business. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, plus, couple of years off your life. So like, what's that worth as a mentor? Yeah. So I don't know if we need to go too much down that path, or if you have anything else to say. But
yeah, I would just say, because it was pointed out that we seldomly talk about coconut. So, and I don't think that it's intentional. We have some intentions.
We're not going to start talking about it.
But I feel like the franchise model is a great epitome of the benefit of a mentor. Right? Like, people across the board, regardless of what you're buying, when you buy a franchise package, you're buying a brand, you're buying SOPs, you're buying
the manuals.
You're buying a system, right? And in a lot of ways, mentors serve as a system to help you not only get a higher probability of predicting the future, but also knowing like, hey, don't step over here. You don't want to do that yet. And I think that there is a cost to that, when there's a direct cost, and then there's the opportunity cost of not getting yourself out there and talking to people who have paved the path for you. There's nothing noble in saying like, well, I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to be an industry disruptor. Like, I have found more benefit in reaching out to some of the people that are in like competitors and saying like, hey, like, I'd love to pick your brain. And then 9 times in 10, they're always open to help. And I can avoid pitfalls, and I can also accelerate the rate of growth because I have the mentors. And then the franchising model, what is so cool, shout out to those guys, but
easy, man, easy.
What, if you want to buy, please, I'm just kidding. What has been really neat for me to see is that on top of those guys' talent is they have taken this brand to different cities, and 3 of the 4 are going to hit over $1 million in revenue this year.
It's crazy.
That's insane, considering that only 6% of businesses ever get there. We're at 80% of our coconuts getting there.
Yeah.
And I think
it took us 3 years.
It took us 3 years. And so I feel like if you are not reaching out to people that you admire in some way, but I'd also say too, like, if you notice an entrepreneur that is home a lot and with their family, like, that also might be someone to reach out to and say like, hey, how do you do entrepreneurship? And they might say, hey, it comes at a cost. Like, I only make $100,000 a year, but I have the freedom that my business is working while I am at home, and I love being with my family. But there's all these little things that you can pick and choose from people if you just choose to reach out and just ask for some pointers and guide points.
I love that, man.
Yeah,
Number 1. And I laugh about this because I feel like I was a little extreme on this, but a lot of business owners put up with more than they should from their employees. So that sounds really harsh, but here's the thing. Because you're having a hard time hiring technicians, or you have a hard time, with CSR, like any type of department that you have in your company, create a standard and stick to it. Give all the warnings, write people up, which we've talked about. That's important. But don't just slack off because, I can't get another technician in the door. Don't hold that standard. But don't be extreme too. I remember, I'll tell this quick story. His name was Logan Benson, man. I'll never, I don't remember most of the text, dude, but Logan Benson, he worked for us. I think we got him from Blue Sky. Anyways, probably the hardest working guy ever. Like, whatever stop we would put on him, he would take, and not even he wouldn't just get it done. Like, he would hit zero reservices, man. Like, this guy is the technician, right? I'll never forget one night, 9 o'clock at night. Okay. It's summertime. He started at 6. He's coming in, bro, parks his truck, and it is so filthy. Like, it's I open up the door and Circle K, what are they, 40? No, it's bigger than a 44 ounce. You know the old Circle K cups? Oh, yeah. It's falling out the door, bro. He has product everywhere. Whatever you can imagine in the cab, it's in there. Okay. I just light him up about having a dirty truck. And I'll never forget like that look in his face, dude. Like, screw freaking you, man. I don't know how much longer he lasted after that. So I'm not saying like be that extreme, but you have to hold your standard. When we talk about like, hey, a lot of people say like, how did Green Mango have so much success? I think it's holding the standard. I think it's being true to the business model that you created when you started.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of ways that you can be tolerant. And I feel like what I was telling, one of our managers yesterday, I said, I can hold the same standard that you want to, but I can do it in a much more tactful way that people won't be repulsed by
what it is that I'm doing. Explain that.
Right. So it's like my demeanor as a small business owner is like, who knows if Cameron back then, like if that was the best thing or if it was the worst thing. But sometimes as a small business owner, it's not always about don't tolerate or tolerate, because I know that it's such a wide spectrum. However, how you go about what you tolerate, I think dictates
and how
the
many
culture.
times you tolerate it, though. I think that's the key.
Yeah, and I think it dictates the culture. Because if you tolerate a certain thing, the same thing multiple times, that's one thing. However, if you address poor performance and it opens up a line of communication where maybe the same result happens with a person, however, it's a new problem, that's different. And I feel like that's leveling up the leadership and the tolerance threshold. When you say, hey, you've consistently got 10 sales a day, we need you at 15. And then all of a sudden there's this line of communication open where it's like, how can I help you get there? And then they finish at 12. And it's like, well, do I tolerate it still? Well, they're getting better, right? And I feel like when we were talking about this before, it was this idea of we feel vulnerable sometimes, like, I can't lose this guy, I'll be screwed. We've been hurt by people leaving, but we have never sustained that loss. And I feel like we've always been better holding the line on standards, teaching the people that are here who we are and what we're about more than we've ever benefited from tolerating poor behavior and even if it means great performance.
Yeah.
I think what has been the hardest thing for me to watch over the years is knowing that if someone just makes the change, whether it's performance, behavior, attitude, like I need you to show up on time and I need you to have a better attitude. I need you to show up on time and have a better attitude. It's like anywhere you go, you're going to have to make that change. And I want the benefit from tolerating you this long. So I just want you to make that change, right? But then people say like, oh, I don't have time to read. I don't have time to go on YouTube and get better at sales. Or these, entrepreneurs say like, well, I just haven't had time to write anything down. This is what I said yesterday, and I'll boost you up a little bit. Because it was an organic thought. It was an organic comment. And I was telling James, I said, the reason you, Cisco,
okay.
I said, the reason you can demand excellence is because you have excellent habits. You can demand people put in 110%, hold themselves accountable, follow up with, hey, I didn't hear back from you. Like, you can demand those things because you do it. And that's why my training, it fits so perfectly in that, because I said, you guys have to hold the line starting with yourselves. And if you keep telling yourself you don't have time, inevitably and ironically, you will eventually not have time to do the things that you want to do most, because you can't give up the things that you want to do now. And that's where I have a problem with people and like, I don't have time. It's like, okay, what'd you do from 9 to 11 last night? I went to bed. It's like, I remember in Georgia, you were making the manual at 1 and 2 a.m. It's like, you have time. It's just what you prioritize will ultimately show in actual work that you have in front of you.
You said it so well, man.
It's a sensitive topic right now, especially with my salespeople here, where I'm like, I've given them 5 YouTube channels to get better at sales. I said, have any of you gone on? Oh, I forgot. It's like,
well, we don't appreciate something until it's gone.
Right.
So how do you get someone to appreciate what you're saying is like their job? When you're saying they're running out of time, like they're going to come into HR and they're going to get let go, and now they don't have time to improve. And because you took it away from them, now hopefully they have that feeling in their stomach that they never want again, and they're going to carry it to that next job, and that sucks. And I think everyone has to go through it. So it's like, how do you get someone to appreciate the job before it's gone. Is that your little, you're suspended for a couple days?
Yeah, but like, no, but hear me out. This is what kills me about some people that have left here or who have been,
Hey, maybe that's what we should do with one of our guys right now in sales.
Yeah.
I like the suspension, man.
The very managers that we've exited because of shady practices or poor behavior, they all like say, well, I'm going to stick it to you and start my own business. It's like, cool. Apply what you did here and will your business work? No.
Yeah.
Every time. And that's why it's so hard for me to work with people that say like, well, hey, to stick it to you, I'm going to go be what you wanted me to be anyway. And it's like, that's what's hard for you. You and I had a heart to heart 2 days ago. Let's talk about that for a second, where you genuinely want what's best for me. How you say it sometimes is the sweetest. It's not always the sweetest, right? Here's what I'll say though. It's like, we had a great follow-up today, and it's to understand that, Evan, like, if you just did what I'm asking you to do, would we be better for it or worse? It's always better. I genuinely always default that if I just applied what he's saying, will I be better or worse? If I just turn in all my receipts, would we be better or worse? We'd be better. If I just put better direction into some of the leaders, would be better or worse? Better. It's like everything that you say, like, hey, I need you to make time to do this, or I need you to do this, like, it's like, hey man, I know you don't have time. If you just made time and did that, would your company be better or worse? If you continue the same behavior, not making time, will your company be better or worse? Worse? It's like, okay. You know what you're getting then.
I love that. I mean, so what we hear with most companies under 5 million is like, I'm out on a route all day, or I'm running around and I don't get home till 9 o'clock. And then, so I'm not doing my manuals. I'm not thinking how to do collaborations. I'm not thinking of how to come up with an incentive plan for my current employees for them to make more money, which means more revenue for me.
Right.
So what would you tell that person? Like, I know what I would tell them, but what would you tell them, man? I don't say things the right way.
I would say, you don't rise to the level expectations. You fall to the level of your systems.
And I would say suck it up and do it from 9 to 1 and take 5 less hours of sleep.
And then I would say that at the very end. Or I would.
It's like, dude, do you want to keep in this rotation forever? And that's why we make a great duo. Like, I might hurt them with those feelings, like it might hit them, and then you're gonna be like, give them a little bit of hope. It's like,
I'll go scratch their back for a second.
But it drives me nuts, and that's the same guy that's saying, dude, I'm only making $60,000 a year still. It's like, well, what have you really sacrificed? Like, you're just running around with a chicken with his head cut off. Like, be disciplined at 9 o'clock at night to sit down, even if it's 30. Here's the thing, dude. And Jesse Itzler, right?
Yeah.
Is that how you say his last name?
Yeah.
His whole principle of like, and I know this is controversial, but between 10 and 30 minutes a day on one topic, like, you'll become great at it, right? So spend 30 minutes or 15 minutes a day writing your manuals or SOPs for 2 months, and it'll be done. Like, you're telling me you don't have 15 minutes a day? Like, come on, man.
Right.
To have a better year next year, to be less stressed out, to, not deal with all the things you're dealing with.
Right.
That's what you need. You need to have discipline as an entrepreneur. I mean, that's another one, but we're trying to stick to 5 here.
Yeah. Make time for anything that is important. And again, that's why I say everything that you don't make time for will reflect in some way, whether it's taking away, detracting from your business, or ultimately it will keep you handcuffed to that. I guess that's what I'm obsessed with right now. And this is what I told everyone at Coconut. I said this today. I said, guys, where we are today and where we need to go, I need to change. And the Evan that you've known, I'm still here. However, I can't take anyone with me that doesn't want to grow and doesn't put in work after hours. So if you're not reading, if you're not trying to get better, if you're not trying to help with our systems and operations and putting in time, you can't come with. And this is probably our goodbye.
This is a good train to be on.
Yeah. This is a great, I sold the dream because like that's how I feel. I only want to be with people that you can't take people to a certain level that don't want to be there.
That's that's one of the principles that we talked about though, right? Like, putting up with too much. How long do we put up with? You're
Like, which one are we talking about?
like you just like, dude, and this is where I was talking to one of our managers because we were talking about letting someone go. And I said, why should I feel bad letting this person go just because he's been with me for a while, just because he shows up every day? Like, he's checking all the boxes, but he's lazy when he's here. And he's not willing to invest more after hours to improve his, without getting into too much detail, really like improve himself, we'll say. So like both parties need to give and take.